The Senate will come to order. Today's chaplain is Senator Andrew Matthews from Senate District 15, and following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Let us pray. In the Psalms, chapter 67, the psalmist said, "God be merciful unto us, and bless us, and cause his face to shine upon us, that thy way may be known upon earth, thy saving health among all nations." And Heavenly Father, we come to you today in times that we've never seen quite like this before. And we pray for our communities, we pray for our state, and we pray that you would make your saving health known among all nations. We pray for those who are hospitalized and ask that you would grant them health and recovery. We pray for those who are quarantined or isolating, either with symptoms or trying to avoid catching symptoms. Father, bring your saving health to them as well. Please protect our families, our communities, our cities from the downtown and inner city areas to the far rural points of this state. Would you bring your health and your safety as our great physician and make it known among the nations? Pray for wisdom for our leaders, for our governor and for our legislative leaders as we're making decisions in this time. Would you bestow your wisdom upon us all that we would make the right decision and wise choices for the state of Minnesota moving forward? We thank you for what you will do and bless you for it. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Secretary will take the roll.
Senators Abler, Anderson B., Anderson P., Bach, Benson, Bigham, Carlson, Chamberlain, Champion, Clausen, Cohen, Swazinski, Dames, Dibble, Draheim, Dietzick, Eaton, Eichhorn, Eakin, Franzen, Friends, Gazelka, Goggin, Hall, Herr, Hayden, Hoffman, Housley, Howe, Ingebrigtsen, Isaacson, Jasinski, Jensen, Johnson, Kent, Kiffmeyer, Klein, Coran, Lane, Lang, Latz, Limmer, Little, Marty, Matthews, Miller, Nelson, Newman, Newton, Osmick, Pappas, Pratt, Rarick, Ralph, Rest, Rosen, Rude, Senjum, Simonson, Sparks, Tomasoni, Torres Ray, Utke, Weber, Westrom, Uyghur, Wickland.
A quorum is present. Members, I'd like to take a brief moment to remind everyone of the procedure we will be following for today. Whenever there is a voice vote, we will pause to allow the front desk to call the alternate locations for their voice vote totals. When it comes time for an electronic roll call vote, the members in the chamber will vote at their desk first, then will leave the chamber through the front door and wait until all other senators have voted before re-entering the chamber. Then I will call each alternate location one at a time, and the members will come to the chamber, cast their vote at their own desk, and will then return to their alternate location. Once all voting is complete, I will announce the results and we will continue with the next order of business. If at any time a senator needs to address the body in debate or has a question, they should alert their point person in their alternate location, who will contact the front desk, and we will pause proceedings until the member arrives in the chamber or has the question clarified. On that note, we will begin with the 8th order of business, introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed in today's introduction calendar are Senate Files 4445 through 4451. These bills are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that Senate File number 4451 be laid on the table.
On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. We will pause to get the votes from the other locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. We will continue with the ninth order of business, motions and resolutions. There are a few authors' motions listed in the agenda. We'll take these authors' motions as one motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Again, we'll take a brief pause to capture the rest of the votes. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Senate Resolution number 226 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration. The Secretary will read Senate Resolution number 227.
Senators Gazelka and Kent introduce Senate Resolution number 227, a Senate resolution amending the temporary rules of the Senate.
Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Resolution number 227 be adopted.
To that motion, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, members, we're about to do something I don't think has ever been done on the Senate floor, and that is to allow people to vote differently in locations around here, and frankly, even some not here. So Senate Resolution number 227 amends the temporary Senate rules on a short-term, limited basis related to the current public health emergency. This temporary change will permit senators to vote from a remote location and allows the Secretary to adopt procedures to ensure remote voting is conducted accurately.
Discussion on that motion. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to encourage members to support this motion. This is a historic time, but we are reacting to extreme circumstances, and I very much appreciate the healthy discussions that we have all had in trying to keep members safe so that we can continue to do the people's business. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Senator Gazelka renews his motion to adopt Senate Resolution number 227. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. We will again take a brief pause and get the vote totals from the alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions will revert to the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following House file herewith transmitted. House File Number 4531, a bill for an act relating to state government providing COVID-19 response efforts. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
There is no action required on that message. Moving to the next order of business, the fourth order of business, first reading of House bills. The Secretary will read the House file number.
House File Number 4531.
House File 4531 is given its first reading. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to House File 4531, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended as to give House File Number 4531 its second and third reading and place it on final passage.
Discussion, Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, given the circumstances, I would encourage members to support the motion.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, Senator Gazelka renews his motion to suspend the rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. We again will take a brief pause to collect the votes from the alternate locations. Receiving a sufficient number of aye votes, the motion prevails. The Secretary will give the House file its second reading.
House File Number 4531.
Second reading. Discussion on House File 4531. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. House File 4531 has a very important piece in this bill directing appropriations to the governor as per his request for the COVID-19 Minnesota Fund. And the use of the money is related to the outbreak of this COVID-19 and to address the COVID-19 executive orders. A few differences between the governor's request and what is in the final bill that has been agreed upon by all four bodies I'd like to just go through. The availability of the money is now 45 days later from enactment to May 11th of 2020. And the amount of money that is being transferred is the full request of $200 million. There will be a twice per month report that is on the 15th and the end of the month to the commission that is a new commission that has been titled the Legislative COVID-19 Response Commission, the LCRC. That is where there is a difference with the governor's request because we have 10 total on this commission, 5 from the Senate, 5 from the House. The Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Minority Leader, the Senate Finance Chair, the Senate Finance Ranking Member, the Senate, and the Senate President. On the House side, we have the Speaker, the Minority Leader, the Ways and Means Chair, the Ways and Means Ranking Member, and the House Majority Leader. And we have designees permitted in this. The expenditures, are submitted to the Commission if a single expenditure exceeds $1 million. And there is no requirement for if the expenditure is less than $1 million. The submission would include the total amount of the proposed expenditure, the purpose of the expenditure, the time period of a proposed expenditure, and any other additional information that the Commissioner of MMB would require. There is a review of those proposed expenditures, and if there is 3 votes on the negative side of this expenditure from the House and 3 from the Senate, that expenditure does not go forward. Otherwise, a positive recommendation or no recommendation says the money does go forward. And that recommendation from the Commission, if it's negative, has a 24-hour after the request deadline. And these permits, this also permits action via public meeting, remote meeting, or with written communication. And as I said, these funds are available until May 11th, 2020. I will stand for questions.
Further discussion on House File 4531. I have a list of folks that are not in the chamber who would like to speak, but before I do that, I'd like to ask the members in the chamber if they would like to speak. Senator Bach.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator Pratt yield for a question?
Senator Pratt will yield. Senator Bach.
Senator Pratt, I read with some interest when the governor issued his executive order probably about a week ago, 20-15, that he made a decision to take $20 million out of a fund over at Department of Economic Development, DEED. It's a fund called the 21st Century Minerals Fund. It's a fund that we put together probably a couple decades ago so that the state would have some money to do large industrial mining type projects for the public infrastructure that's required to make these projects work. And one of the most recent ones was in Nashwauk, Minnesota, more than $1 billion project. And the infrastructure to get in the rail and the roads and the gas lines, the utilities, the state used $66 million out of this fund to put in that public infrastructure that was needed so that that economic development project could start construction. You know, I think, Senator Pratt, people on the range would be happy to know that they're being asked to help with funding this pandemic that we have. But I also think they would want me to ask, if we're going to be asked to help with money that's designated to the Iron Range, are we giving a grant, or is this money going to be paid back to us? I do think it's a little unfair to think that people on the range should grant money to the general fund at a time when we're running surpluses and have a large budget reserve. So, Senator Pratt, I know you're not the one that initiated this. It was initiated by the governor, but now we're codifying it into law. So I'm just wondering what the repayment mechanism is, if there is one, so the people on the range can be assured that when the next big industrial project comes along, we've got the money to do the public infrastructure that's going to need to be done.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Bach, for that question. Members, the provision that Senator Bach is asking about is in Article 1, Section 11. And Senator Bach, I did not see this language until this morning. I thought it was all covered by the governor's executive order, and so I didn't have any input in order to say whether or not we should talk about a repayment mechanism. But I agree with you in the fact that these funds are very important and have been set aside for economic development on the range to make sure that we have really great, not just good paying, but great paying jobs up in the range for the hardworking men and women of Minnesota on natural resources that quite honestly are of national interest to all of us. So Senator Bach, this exactly mimics the governor's executive order with no changes, and I wish I'd have had a chance to ask that question.
Senator Bach.
Mr. President, Senator Pratt yield again.
Senator Pratt will yield. Senator Bach.
Senator Pratt, I guess this is more of a statement than a question, but I'm hoping that in a subsequent bill, as we move forward between now and adjournment, we can work on some language to make sure that that this fund gets paid back. There is some precedent for that. Back during Governor Plenty's time, when the state was managing huge deficits, some money was actually, I believe, unallotted out of this fund by Governor Plenty to keep the state's budget in balance. And a mechanism was put into law, and that money was then paid back. So there's precedent to borrow from this and pay it back. So, Senator Pratt, I just would like to work with you going forward that in some subsequent bill we can get some language in there to make sure that this account gets paid back. There's a number of these large mining projects being contemplated on the range, and there's a lot of infrastructure that goes along with them.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Bach. And as soon as we can be closer than 6 feet together, I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President, members, and Senator Bach. I didn't know that I was not consulted by the governor when he made the executive order to take the money out, nor did I know that the language was not in there till this morning. I thought that there was a working group, and I think part of that could be this most recent change that it's hard for us all to communicate what's going on. However, I do think that it's important that that resource is for the range. That's what it's always been meant for. We have to figure out how we're going to work together on multiple issues as we move forward. This will be one of, I think, many that we'll have to grapple with, but I definitely want to work with you.
Senator Bach.
You know, Mr. President, there is some language in here that says when the loans are being repaid, the money goes back to the fund that it originated from. But I think the problem with that is I don't know what this loan program is about, and it could be that these loans are forgivable loans. I don't know what potentially the default rate's going to be on these loans, but there clearly are going to be some defaults. So I think, and I also wouldn't want to have to wait 20 years. There's more urgent need for this money than a long-term debt service payment over a long period of time. So I look forward to working with everybody to try and fix this as we move forward between now and May 18th.
Members, I have a number of people who would like to speak on the bill after third reading. So what I'm going to ask is if anyone would like to offer an amendment, whether they're in the chamber or outside of the chamber, I would recommend that you let your team captain know in your alternate location so they can let us know. And then if you can make your way to the chamber, we'll get the amendments taken care of and introduced. What I don't want to do is miss anyone who wants to offer an amendment before we go to third reading. So Believe we have Senator Westrom. Are you here to offer an amendment? Okay.
Mr. President?
Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, I'd like to offer the A50 amendment.
Senator Westrom offers the A50 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Westrom moves to amend House File Number 4531 as follows. Page 9, line 18, after the first period, insert. This is the A50 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, I offer this amendment on behalf of many in the Senate, but on behalf of the economic engines in our state that have seen significant damage and significant economic problems because of the COVID-19 virus and the closure of restaurants, bars, and many small businesses across the state, cosmetology, barbershops. In rural Minnesota, these are typically small businesses, often 1, 2, 3, 4 employees, owned by women, owned by men. But it's the entrepreneurs that are behind these restaurants and these small businesses that have taken their life savings, many times a loan against their own home, just to keep those businesses surviving. And we've all heard it. Talked to one business in Big Stone County. They've got over $6,000 of monthly expenses, fixed costs, with no revenue coming in their restaurant because of the shutdowns. And so, Mr. President, it's those businesses, those car dealerships, those entities across our state, and we all know of them, that have suffered significant economic harm and significant economic loss because of everybody pitching in to do the right thing, to follow the governor's orders. But this amendment would direct that half of the $200 million, so $100 million at least, needs to be directed towards small business support. Of the $200 in this bill, the governor has requested, but he's also talked about they aren't sure where it's going to go yet, and there's not a lot of direction in this bill. We're trying to give the governor quite a bit of flexibility as they see the need. But this simply says $100 million or more of this needs to help our small business owners that are really suffering across our state, especially the ones that have to shut down completely. They've had many employees they've had to lay off. We've seen that in our high unemployment filings this past week. This morning I read over 160,000 filings in our state in the last week. Those employees are hurting, as are the small business owners that employ those important people. And so this amendment would just set that parameter so our small business folks know we're here at the Senate fighting for them, and we are going to be sure that they are included in these dollars, that the governor and his staff will be finding the best way to allocate over the next several weeks. And so, to be a voice for our small business owners, we want to ensure that half of these dollars, of this $200 million, would at least go to help them economically. One business I talked to actually on the way to St. Paul today, a car dealership that does some repairs, oil changes, and actually was calling to set up schedule an appointment. And when I called, usually it's a half a week to a week to even get in for an oil change. They said, we could get you in this afternoon because things have really slowed down around here. Members, those are just two stories of small businesses in my district. Many, many more are out there. But we want them to know this bill, these dollars can be and should be targeted to them receiving a fair share as well. We want the governor to help work with us to make that happen, which we've given him the flexibility in this bill to do. This would just add some additional language to make sure those small business owners that have put their life savings on the line are not forgotten about. And so, Mr. President, I felt this was a very important point to make, talking to other senators, talking to our constituents. But, Mr. President, I also know there's three parties, a House, a Senate, and the governor's office, that have to work out these bills and compromise. And we are in unique, dire times that we need to work together and respect this bill getting passed without prior amendments agreed to. And so, Mr. President, I felt it was very important to raise this issue for our small business owners. On behalf of the Senate, and many of us concerned about this, we'd ask the governor to strongly look at this language and comply with it. But, Mr. President, I would withdraw it out of respect to getting this bill passed today expeditiously on behalf of the entire state of Minnesota. And so, Mr. President, I wanted to raise the issue, but I would withdraw this amendment right now on behalf of our small business owners that are suffering under this situation as well.
Senator Westrom withdraws the A50 amendment. Members, we're back on the bill, and we're going to go to Senator Newman for discussion on House File 4531.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are two portions of the bill that I would like to address. One portion is on the Real ID aspect, and the other involves an extension of driver's license that may expire in the near future. First of all, with respect to the Real ID portion, there is language in the bill that will ease the requirements on proof of residency when applying for a Real ID driver's license. This easement has the effective date 4 weeks following the final enactment of when the program is finished. And a couple of examples that I would give you would be lengthening the amount of time that documents could be used or considered usable. It would allow, for instance, utility bills with two unrelated people's names on the bill. It would remove a requirement that a high school or college ID be presented along with a certified transcript, and there are a number of others like that. Keep in mind, members, that when it comes to the Real ID bill, the states have the authority under the federal law to change residency requirements in order to obtain a Real ID. And so you will note that there is nothing in here which addresses the issue of identity. That solely falls within the federal laws. The second part of the bill then appropriates $2.4 million from the Vehicle Services Operating Account. I specifically want to note for you that that is an existing account. This does not involve any general fund money, and the purpose of that is to help with any backlog, the idea being that they want to try to keep the turnaround time from when you apply for a Real ID to when it is actually issued to a maximum of 45 days, and we have been told by DVS that extra funding is going to be necessary in order to hire the temporary employees, but also note that it is only for work performed or expenses incurred on or before December 31st, 2020. So there is a limitation on how long this appropriation can be used. Any unused money then would be returned to the Vehicle Services Operating Account. The second portion of the bill involves the driver's license. There are driver's licenses in the state of Minnesota that will expire during the emergency order. With the stay-at-home order, we have got driver's license agents' offices have been closed, and so what we're trying to do with this is to provide some relief to folks who have a license that has expired and they are unable to get it renewed. So we are providing an expiration date so that during the course of this emergency order, your driver's licenses will not expire. You will have 2 months following the end of the emergency order in which to have your driver's license expired. This information will be provided. The information that your driver's license has not expired will be provided to law enforcement, and that will be available to law enforcement not only within the state of Minnesota, but also to law enforcement outside of the state of Minnesota should one of our residents be stopped in a foreign jurisdiction. That concludes the remarks that I have, Mr. President, on those two aspects of the bill. I would mention parenthetically that these are provisions that Senator Dibble and I worked on together, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to thank him for his work on this. I also want to mention, members, that Senator Dibble had drafted a resolution. It isn't before us today, but it is a resolution addressing the extension of the federal ID implementation date, which has now been extended. It was October 1st, 2020. The federal government has now extended that. There is issues in addition to when the implementation date would be reapplied that Senator Dibble and I have addressed in this resolution, and it is our desire that we bring that resolution before the body at a future date. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on House File 4531, Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to address the food shelf programs. In this bill, we have $9 million for fiscal year 2020. As Minnesotans know, people in the hospitality and retail and restaurant industry faced some of the first layoffs due to our COVID response. In addition, we have families who are pulling back and maybe aren't comfortable visiting their food shelf. And so we are going to see some unprecedented demand on our food shelves, things we haven't seen since the last recession. So this $9 million goes to regional food banks so that they can give response to specialized community needs. Goes to local food shelves to purchase food, diapers, toilet paper, and other necessary supplies for Minnesota families. But importantly, members, as we ask particularly seniors to self-isolate, to socially distance, they might not be comfortable going out to a food shelf or might not have someone who can go out for them. And so we'll have transportation support for those people who are quarantined, who are socially distancing, and that is included in this language as well. And I can stand for questions.
Further discussion on the bill, Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a day we really didn't want to be talking about. I'm sitting in Senator Egerbritz's desk, and I only think about fishing. That's the only funny thing about today. This is a very, very challenging time, and this is a bill that nobody wanted to have to write. The governor has issued executive orders he didn't want to make. People are in situations in their houses where they didn't want to stay. People are very concerned about their futures, what's going to happen with their family, with their well-being, with their business, with their children, with everything that they thought of, and it caught us all by surprise. And the 3 weeks that have gone by have seemed like a year. And I think people could be somewhat assured that here we are in the most spread out of quarters across the entire half the Capitol building, showing a good example about how we can do work yet in a safe way. And this may be some harbinger of the future where we start to think about how we go about this. And the segment that I worked on has to do with helping the people that are the most challenged. But I don't want anybody to feel left out like we didn't know that they had some challenges. Senator Westrom was eloquent in his concern about the many families who wonder how are they going to make their next mortgage payment? How are they going to pay property taxes in 6 weeks? And so we're working on that. The feds have made an action of $2 trillion, and hopefully that'll make a difference. But there are many challenging times ahead. But to make sure that the people that are on the streets that have nowhere to reside and to shelter safely, There's a number of provisions here which I am proud to announce that there is bipartisan, bicameral, if you count the governor, what is that, tricameral, whatever, support for that we have actually found ways to make a difference. And so there are some people that have nowhere to go at all, and they need a shelter in place. And so instead of going to the emergency room where we need to keep those available, we'll be providing spaces for them in many ways. There's already ideas being sprung up about interesting ways to help people that are homeless for a place to go. The simple idea is put them in a motel. Hennepin County is doing that now. But more creative ideas will come forward, and there's $15 million in here to handle that need. And there's $5 million for helping deal with hygiene issues of that group. And if you've ever seen a homeless shelter, you know that they're stacked head to toe. And it doesn't take a lot to make that disease spread, and there's nobody who would want to see that whole group just come down with COVID and experience that tragedy. And then finally in this section, there's $6 million for staff to help make that work out. And finally, there's an increase in the cash grants to the people on economic assistance of $500 to help them experience the challenges that they might be going through. And one of the positive things about this, just in terms of how we recover, is a good deal of this money is actually going to be going to Main Street places, small motels, the stores, and so on. And so, Mr. President and members, these are challenging times, but I'm really proud to be a part of this solution as we move forward to make a difference for Minnesota.
Further discussion on House File 4531, Senator Hayden.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and I, like everybody else, is grateful to be here. So many people across the country, across the world, are not, and we are here trying to help them. Mr. President, I had kind of teed up a whole speech about the $500 of cash assistance in the MFIB or in the TANF fund, and Senator Abeler has just said that it is in the bill. And so, Mr. President, will Senator Abeler yield?
Senator Abeler will yield. Senator Hayden.
Good. Well, thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abeler, would you show me either in the bill on the spreadsheet where that is at? Because it was brought to my attention that it wasn't there, and I would certainly would love it to be there. And if someone could point that out, either you or someone else that worked on it, I would appreciate that.
Senator Abeler.
Actually, I just presumed it was. We negotiated it yesterday, and it seemed like it was all agreed upon, and I was told that the things that we had agreed on yesterday were here. If it's not, I will stand corrected and apologize to the good senator.
Senator Hayden.
Well, Mr. President, if there are others, I was not involved in those negotiations, and it was alerted to me that it wasn't. And so if there is another member in the body that was involved in the negotiations, if they could rise to tell me, and I'm getting some nods. So I'm going to move forward to say that it should be in the bill. Mr. President, these folks that are receiving MFIB through the federal TANF program are some of the lowest income, they're some of the lowest, they make some of the lowest money in our community. We know this year, or last year, we were able to give them a slight raise after over 30 years. Mr. President, these folks, this is their unemployment program. Often they are working. There is a mandate that they either are looking for work or work, but they don't meet the threshold often to get unemployment. Their children are now home, the same needs that everybody else has. They have to figure out how to go grocery shopping. Their children may or may not be getting fed from school or the school drop-off sites. Mr. President, they now have to figure out how to, as it is in my household, how to, as my children or my adult children, my college-age children are home, and there's more food that you have to buy, more laundry detergent that you have to purchase, more soap that you have to buy, more hand sanitizer that you have to keep your families clean. And so, Mr. President, I really am really saddened that we couldn't give just an extra $500 out of a fund that's already dedicated for that reason. At the federal level, they're upping the UI benefits. People are going to get more money to try to help them, but these folks in the TANF fund won't be able to do it. And Mr. President, it's also sad because this doesn't come out the general fund. Money's already there. So I'm not sure why we would keep that out. I'm not sure why we would not want to take those that are the lowest income in our community and not give them an extra boost because their cost has risen as well. Their anxiety is at the same level as everyone else. So I would hope that in subsequent bills, as we move forward in a much more expeditious way, that we find ways in which to not leave out the lowest income earners or the people at the lowest level, the lowest income in our community, to leave them out. With that, Mr. President, I won't offer an amendment. I know that this has been agreed to, but I do say that, and I want to make this and echo this loud and clear, that this has to be fixed, that these are the most vulnerable people in our community, and that we should have allocated the money to make sure that they got a little extra money to take care of their families as we deal with this global pandemic.
Further discussion, Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, I just want to apologize, Senator Hayden. I just was repeating what I thought had been done. And there's different levels. I'm a mid-level manager, Mr. President, and so we negotiated language, and I was all part of that. And I just want to tell Senator Hayden that if you want to put a bill in for that, I will be the second author. And this is just a real crisis. I also wanted to mention something else that's not in the bill that I knew wasn't in the bill, and that's the language of Senate File 4200, which was the language that moved out of our committee, again, a year ago, which probably is only like 10 days ago, where we give the commissioner a temporary emergency authority. And the governor, I supported the governor making an executive order to appoint last Friday. We needed the executive authority, the temporary authority to go forward. But I'm concerned that when in that order are suspending statutes, which I'm not convinced that he has the really authority to do, but I'm glad he went on a limb to try to help out the people. I hope still we can pass this legislation so it's done in the correct way, so that we can preserve our constitutional separation of powers. Because people know the governor can't suspend statutes and he can't spend money that just like that. But I do want to commend the groups that worked on that. That was also a very collaborative process. It happened quick with a very engaged Commissioner Harpstead and others. And so thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on House File 4531, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, in Article 1, Section 11, we already talked a little bit about the appropriations from the 21st Century Fund, and also a $10 million transfer from the Minnesota Investment Revolving Loan Account to fund a short-term working capital loan for small businesses. This was a loan program that was identified by the governor in Executive Order 2000, well, it wasn't 2004, but where we would basically lend a small business $2,500 up to $35,000 interest-free. We would set some favorable terms for repayment, and after 2 years, the business could qualify for partial forgiveness of that loan. Roughly about 50% is what we've been talking about. In addition, members, on Section 3 of Article 2 is a small business guarantee loan program. Minnesota will set aside $10 million in a dedicated reserve to guarantee up to 80% of small business loans made through our qualified economic development lenders. These loans are meant to be used for repair of buildings, but mostly for working capital, to make sure that our employers can make their payroll, their rent, their utilities, their inventory, all the expenses that they have to cover during this business interruption. This, members, should allow an additional $50 million to be lent out in working capital and be available to small businesses across the state. Section 14 of the bill temporarily suspends workforce and equal pay certificates. The Department of Administration requested that we temporarily suspend workforce and equal pay certificates in order to make it faster to onboard new vendors and service providers. This does not impact existing relationships, only new relationships that need to be onboarded quickly, and this would expire in January so that we would be back to business as usual. Sections 20 through 23 basically conform the governor's Executive Order 2005, which allowed for changes to the unemployment system that allowed small businesses or allowed workers not to wait 7 days before collecting benefits, that provided for some mandated leave away from work if someone was exposed to COVID-19. Said that small business or business owners wouldn't be surcharged if for layoffs as we normally would, along with a number of other smaller provisions. Members, this is really meant to put into session law exactly what the governor announced in Executive Order 20-05. And finally, we have a one-time exemption to restrictions on the Minnesota Investment Fund local government loan repayment. This will allow local communities to use uncommitted funds associated with MIF repayment to be used to support local businesses. And we're really trying to focus this money on retail, hospitality, and service-oriented businesses in particular. This is very similar to language, members, that we passed through the Senate in 2017. And Mr. President, I would stand for questions.
Further discussion on House File 4531, Senator Limmer. Oh, Senator Pratt, more
thank you, Mr. President. I did want to say all of these provisions were really done in partnership. We've spoken with the Commissioner of Deed almost every day, his team every day, and these two loan programs, the unemployment, was really a partnership between Deed and our committee, and I want to thank Senator Lane and Senator Champion for their work on these provisions as well.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to address the portion of the bill that my working group was working on. You will find that in Article 2, Sections 10, 11, and 12. Two of the provisions involve the Department of Corrections. The medical director authority is being slightly changed. The Department of Corrections currently has the authority to make medical decisions for incapacitated inmates who are physically in a Department of Correction prison when the inmate has no next of kin. But the department does not have the same authority if the offender is transferred to another medical facility outside of the prison system. The Department of Corrections is asking for the same authority for inmates when that inmate is transported to a community or a DHS setting. This does happen when the inmate needs medical attention that the department can't provide in prison. That's the existing status, but we have no status if the inmate is transferred outside of the prison system. In light of the emergency that we have now, the department is seeking the authority to have that same capacity if the inmate is transferred outside of the prison. I believe that all four caucuses have agreed to this provision. The next provision, also from the Department of Corrections, it would address the county jail or a detention center placement of a defendant. that has less than 90 days to serve his sentence and is currently housed in a county facility outside of a state prison. Right now, the department can contract with counties when the inmate is in the prison and needs to be sent perhaps as a short timer. He's got less than a few months and they're opening up space in the prison. That individual can be transferred to a local county jail or a workhouse. But it only applies once the person has already been in prison. This is for the individual that's awaiting trial. The trial has taken place, and as a result of the sentence, oftentimes they count the time served in jail, and in the event that there's less than 90 days, the department wants to keep that individual in the jail system. There are contracts between the state and counties that allow this, and this would just recognize that authority as well. The third area is regards to a request from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. This section allows the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to delay the submission of fingerprints needed to perform a statutorily authorized background check. This is for essential workers that are working during a critical infrastructure economic sector. Those definitions are in the bill. They recognize who would be considered an essential worker and the fact of what is a critical infrastructure. It follows federal guidelines. When a peacetime emergency is declared by the governor, the Bureau must consider if we need essential workers. Oftentimes they're emergency workers. They may be coming from another state that does not have the same licensing requirements, but can be employed in Minnesota. The background checks will certainly review their work history and perhaps their licensure in another state, but we want to make sure that they're people of good moral character, and fingerprints is the only way we do that. And this causes an opportunity to streamline the hiring by not request, or they would request the fingerprints, but would waive the immediacy prior to employment. This does not take the department off the hook. They still have to go forward with the fingerprint request, but it gives them a little time. Within 30 days, if the fingerprint comes back reflecting that it's a person that should not be in the employment, that individual will have to be immediately dismissed. If there's a person who falsely suggests that they are a licensed person in a critical worker status, that person may be charged with a crime and a gross misdemeanor imposed, as well as being immediately dismissed. I do believe that covers just about everything in our provisions, and I'll stand for questions.
Further discussion on the bill, Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Senator Housley and her working group on grants to child care providers, members, as we know, our child care providers are being hurt by the drop in employment, with families withdrawing from child care centers and home-based family child care centers. However, there are a lot of child care providers who are standing up and continuing to work to take care of the children of our critical health care workers. So there are grant awards and eligible program. So eligible programs include those licensed family child care providers, centers, and places like the YMCA. They have to demonstrate they are financially at risk if they do not receive the grant. That's important, members. This isn't going to just anyone. They have to demonstrate that they are financially at risk. They can receive monthly grant of $4,500. There's an additional $1,000 available if they're open non-standard hours. They serve children whose first language is not English or serve special needs children. There is an additional provision for those licensed centers that serve 15 or more children to receive up to $15,500. And with that, members, I will stand for questions.
Further discussion on the bill. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we all know in this chamber and beyond, the purpose of this bill is COVID-related. And with that, there is an adjustment in the bill dealing with the opioid bill that was passed last year. And it directly affects the manufacturers, wholesalers, and distributors of the medical gas or oxygen folks. And so it's been agreed upon by all four bodies to adjust the manufacturer and wholesalers' application and annual renewal fee to just pay that higher fee for the one facility, and then go back down to the normal fee that they have been paying all along for all the other facilities. As far as distributors, they go back to the amount that they've been paying all along for the last few years, which is $260 for the distributors of medical gas. And this is very important because, as you know, with the COVID-19 issue that the entire nation is facing, we are seeing an increase on oxygen and people that are staying home. They need that supply, and we want to make sure that we allow these facilities and these businesses to be able to continue that supply chain. Also, what's in the bill is an elimination of something that we passed last year dealing with a 30-day supply of your opiate. And this is important just to go ahead and delete that entire section so people that are in chronic pain or have a 30-day supply renewal, that they know that they can continue to get their medication, their opiates ongoing, even if they are sheltered at home. So with that, I'd like to thank Senator Eaton, Representative Olson, the author of the bill in the House, and Representative Olson and Representative Baker from the House. And as I said, it's been agreed upon by all four leaders. Thank you.
Further discussion on House File 4531. Senator Herr.
Mr. President, thank you. I have amendment Senate File A52.
Senator Herr offers the A52 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Herr moves to amend House File number 4531 as follows. Page 7 after 911, insert. This is the A52 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Herr.
Mr. President, I will not speak in much detail about the description of this bill, and is already logged in, so I would ask member to look at it. But I quickly will withdraw this bill, and if you allow me for personal privilege or maybe comment on something in relation to this bill.
Senator Herr, why don't you address the amendment before you withdraw it, and then if it's your wish to withdraw, we can do it, but why don't you explain the amendment first?
Well, the matter is that we all live in Minnesota nice, and I just like to encourage people to have extra Minnesota nice. So this bill is to address us to make sure that information get through to our most vulnerable community regarding hate crime. So that's the detail of it, and the reason I'm also I spoke in great length when COVID-19 bill, first one come around and also second one. So I decided I will not put much description to it so that I don't add on to the intensity that people, my constituents may have. And I know that when this bill is voted upon, I know that 67 state senators and all our legislators will be voting yes on this one, but because of our of the immediate time that we are moving with this process, I have not had the time to talk to every legislator. So I didn't want it to have a smear for this bill as we move forward. That's my reason for withdraw it immediately, and if you can allow me to talk and give some light to the reason I put this amendment forth and the reason I withdraw quickly.
Senator Herr withdraws the A52 amendment. Do you have additional comments, Senator Herr?
Yes,
Senator
Mr.
Herr.
President, and thank you to all members in the Senate here. During this tense time of COVID-19 pandemic, again, I'd like to ask that everybody be extra, extra Minnesota nice. I'm not speaking just to one group of people, but I'm speaking to all Minnesotans. It's easy to say about Minnesota nice or extra, extra Minnesota nice than doing it, especially when people are facing job loss, facing with the virus, and also discrimination at the same time. So it's easy said than done. But let's try our very, very best. Let's try our very best to carry on our motto and also keep in mind being conscious to other people. I know that our agency, our state agency and the governor is doing their role, doing their job, and I trust that they will do their very, very best to keep our citizens safe from the pandemic, as well as keeping our citizenship being cordial and kind and nice to each other. And also ask my fellow legislators to help us calm anxiety in your own district as well. Calm anxiety among each other to everyone, and including situation that may escalate or situation that may be attacking members of your community, including Asian Americans, Asian Minnesotans, and let's do our best. And should we face the worst of time or the darkest moment in our life, in my personal view, I was asked that just close your eye and wish for goodness, and better days will be ahead of us. So thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to make a comment on this. And yes, thank you very much, Mr. President.
Further discussion, Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator Herr for bringing this up. Senator Herr is one of the most conscientious senators I've known, and he represents his district very well. However, there's an issue that Senator Herr, through his grace, is not bringing up, and that is what has been reported to me as a number of attacks on some of our Asian citizens, mostly, by what I can tell, in the metropolitan area. And I believe it may be originating from some odd connection with the COVID-19 virus that started in China, but some people are interpreting that, and they're directing their anger and their fear on certain people in our community. Now, Senator Herr has called me in the last few days about this issue, and although this is not being addressed in this bill, we are wanting to make it a priority as soon as we return. This bill is about the emergency process. Senator Herr was hoping to get some type of enhanced hotline, perhaps, public service announcements pointing out the ridiculous conclusion that some people should associate COVID with an American citizen that just happens to be of Asian descent. We all know that's wrong. It has no place in Minnesota. And Senator Herr, I will commit to you that we will have hearings on your bill as soon as we return in regular session. Thank you for that.
Senator Herr.
thank you, Senator Limmer, for committing yourself to work with me on this, and I look forward for us to have a plan. I think also the governor's office and our agency already have a plan moving forward too. But I know that we will work together in the future, and I also ask for part of my legislators, colleague here, that I did not specify the detail due to my background, and I did not want to intensify or cause any intensity arise from attack that people of my ethnicity receive at this time. So all I ask is people be calm out there and be patient during this tough time.
Further discussion on House File 4531. Next on the list is Senator Franzen. And members, while we're waiting for Senator Franzen, I have a lengthy list of members who'd like to speak after third reading. I'll make one more announcement before we go to third reading. If you have an amendment that you'd like to offer, please let us know. We want all amendments to all members who have an amendment to be able to offer those before we go to third reading. And if there are no more amendments, we'll go to third reading, and then I'll start working off the list that I have after third reading. So discussion on the bill, Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for all of you for being in this chamber and working to pass this important legislation. I want to also thank, I was part of the Child Care Working Group, and thank you, Senator Benson, for giving a recap of it with Senator Housley, and also on the House side with Representative Pinto and Representative Demuth. And I want to reiterate how important that part of this package is. It's probably the longest read part of the bill because it's really important. We know that across the country, we're seeing upwards of 70% of our businesses that are doing child care, family-based care, or child care center care are losing revenue. They're probably going to shut down by next week if we don't pass this legislation. I have two little kids, 3 and 4, as you all know, and they are home and they're not going to their child care setting right now. My particular child care setting has had to consolidate 3 of their businesses into one to be able to get through this time. And that means that people are out of work, and we have to have our child care center come out of this and thrive. We cannot afford to have our child care centers and family child care providers close for good. We have to have our emergency workers to help us during this pandemic, so that is why this part of it is so crucial and critical. All those essential workers that are part of this latest executive order need child care for their kids to be able to do that essential work. So I just wanted to clarify that the baseline for the grants are $4,500. That includes family-based care or child care center care, and then an additional bonus for an added flexibilities and added kits up to $15,500, just because we know that this is, we want all these child care providers to thrive and to make it through this crisis. And I just want to put that on record that it's, that's what we came up with in our working group. And thank you again, Senator Benson, and all of you for supporting this important part of this legislation today.
Members, is there any further discussion on the bill before we go to third reading? Any further discussion on House File 4531 before we go to third reading? Seeing or hearing none, the Secretary will give House File 4531 its third reading.
House File number 4531, a bill for an act relating to state government providing COVID-19 response efforts.
Third reading. Members, I have a pretty lengthy list of members who would like to speak on the bill. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mention the member and then the member who's on deck, just so everyone knows and those members can prepare themselves to make their way to the chamber if they're not already in here. And Senator Jensen is first on the list, and I saw that he was making his way down. And Senator Kiffmeyer is next on the list. So Senator Jensen and then Senator Kiffmeyer. Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. I know that a lot of work has gone into this bill. We live in difficult times. We live in a climate of fear. Edmund Burke said, "No passion so effectively robs a mind of all of its powers of reasoning as fear." So here we go again. In this bill, in Section 10, we see $11 million appropriated to tribal nations. The requirements for identifying how these dollars are used in this section are far more lax than the requirements that our hospitals must fulfill in order to use the dollars they have available. The way the money is laid out, if one of the 11 tribes doesn't apply for its $1 million, that sits there, and the ones that do apply get to divvy it up. $600 million in COVID-19 funding in one way or another. Less than 10% of that for small business, which is the engine of our economy in this state. One of the tribal nations on here has been written up in the New York Times as being the wealthiest tribal nation in the nation. Each member gets $85,000 a month just for being a member of the tribe. That tribe is allowed to have $1 million, and if they choose not to take it, it'll be divvied up among the other tribes. Indeed, this is an omnibus bill. Once again, we do some of our most mediocre work when we have to do an omnibus bill that doesn't get a chance to really get vetted and sliced and diced in the light of day. Certainly, I will vote for this bill because I think we need to provide Governor Walz the support that he needs to act as leader of our state. But it disappoints me that $11 million have been allocated and appropriated in a way that just doesn't have the kinds of checks and balances that it should have. And none of us should feel good about that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Next on the list is Senator Kiffmeyer, followed by Senator Dibble. Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I'm glad to stand today in support of House File 4531, the COVID-19 response. Certainly not because everything in this bill is exactly like any one of us would like it, but because it's necessary to respond to the crisis that is upon us. One thing I have found during crisis times, you make decisions with the best information you have at that time. Hindsight is not foresight. We're here today. We need to make the best decisions that we can and support each other in that regard. One thing I will say, though, is that there is a modeling out there going on that is quite catastrophic, and I don't know if it is really based upon the best facts, science, and information that we could have. And I want to encourage the governor and all those who are working on this to really take a close look at basing decisions upon data that may be old, maybe not solidly based upon the most recent facts and science, because it's critical that we do this today. But as we go forward, we need to use the most recent data and the most accurate modeling so that we make better decisions going forward. Certainly, I recognize that many of us have already recognized some of the positive things, actually. I remember reading about World War I and World War II, that nursing was birthed out of the needs. And as a nurse, I appreciate that. And they developed in their profession since then. In Iraq, they discovered how great they could do with traumatic brain injuries, how sad it was that we even had to do it. But some of those things that came out of it was that medical knowledge that has benefited many since then. Today, I thought it was kind of neat that we could see the FDA work at lightning speed and approve an old drug and working together on that. That's really stodgy bureaucracy actually moving a little faster. We're resurrecting old sanitization techniques, isopropyl alcohol, bleach, vinegar, a variety of these things. Women at home and men are making homemade masks to be used. Foes are working together. We're helping each other. and how grateful I am for those things, and I think we do need to look at that. One thing I would say personally, I sure look forward to the time of our freedom-loving America, getting back to hugs, shaking hands, celebrating birthday parties, celebrating weddings and funerals, being together, celebrating weddings, and attending those funerals and celebrating life that has had a past and recognizing our being together to share the grief. Without a question, those things will come too, and I just wanted to call attention to that as we go forward today. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members.
Next, we have Senator Dibble, followed by Senator Johnson. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Mr. President, members, I appreciate the inclusion of Section 6, which speaks to appropriations for emergency services grants that is intended to provide the kinds of services and shelter and respond to the needs of those who are homeless or otherwise precariously housed and need that kind of help and attention. It is, of course, the humane response, but it also is, of course, in all of our interest to make sure that these folks are well cared for and as protected and as healthy as is possible during this difficult time. And we know, of course, that this is going to happen to a lot of folks, and this is going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on the shelter system. So I appreciate the inclusion of this. I think Senator Abeler spoke to this section earlier, but I did just want to be sure and clarify just one aspect because it has come up as a concern over the last couple of days and in more focused manner earlier today. I'll just read from a comment from one of the homeless youth serving agencies, one of the leaders of the Youth Services Network, the YSN, that is the umbrella organization for all of the homeless youth serving agencies around the state. The news that youth shelters were an oversight here, and I don't know that it's an oversight, but the issue there is oftentimes when homeless youth aren't specifically enumerated and called out in grants for homelessness generally, they're left out, and that is an actual experience time and again with these agencies. It's incredibly heartbreaking. We have an estimated 6,000 unaccompanied youth in our state each night, with 1,500 to 2,000 additional youth sex trafficking victims. And while we support shelter and housing for single adults and older families, these children, youth and teen parents with children should not be forgotten, about which unfortunately happens too often. We see youth as young as 11 and 12 in our shelter on a daily basis. There are only 104 shelters for youth statewide, so prior to the virus pandemic, there were inadequate resources. And right now, we are being overwhelmed with the need on an even higher scale. We are working around the clock to help and ensure the safety of these youth, but we absolutely need the additional shelter, housing, and services for these young people too. So, Mr. President, if Senator Abeler would yield briefly.
Senator Abeler will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abeler, I see in paragraph C of Section 6, it says that notwithstanding any other law or rule to the contrary, the Commissioner may allocate funds to programs, providers, and organizations providing or seeking to provide services to individuals experiencing homelessness through a single fiscal agent chosen by the Commissioner. Senator Abeler, do those individuals experiencing homelessness include homeless youth? And by homeless youth, I of course mean not just kids who are homeless and connected with their families, but those who are unaffiliated with their families.
Senator Abeler.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senator Dibble. I think that I'll answer best I can, and then I'm going to encourage you to follow up with the department. The speed at which this moved the last couple of days, although there were probably 6 conference calls on this, they maybe should have included you, but that's a different editorial comment. The purpose of this in general is to handle issues related to COVID. And so if there was a homeless youth who needed to be sheltered, who had nowhere to shelter, then they would certainly be a part of this. And the other monies are related towards staffing and sterile supplies and so on to deal with actually whomever. The intent is to, the department's going to establish some criteria. They want to get this out the door quick to serve people who need it and who have to shelter in place. Since they have no place to shelter, they wouldn't go to ER or someplace. But they would then, there was some discussion about and unclarity about who's going to decide who gets the money, which grantees. The fiscal agent that will be selected, which will be one of the providers, was the idea, was to be a pass-through. At one point, the discussion was that the department would decide which group should get it. I think that the language is very flexible on that, so I think that they would benefit greatly by your input along the way, and I would encourage you to do that. And if you want me to pile on with that, I'd be happy to join you. Thank you.
Senator Dibble.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that offer of assistance, and I will take you up on that, Senator Abler. Conceptualizing that, I'll probably have a sign-on letter or something of that sort to clarify our intent with these funds. And Mr. President, if I could just raise one more point quickly, not addressed necessarily in this legislation, but I also know that these shelters of all types are under a tremendous amount of pressure, and they cannot go unstaffed. And a lot of the shelter employees have children themselves and are having trouble finding childcare, and are not being deemed as essential employees for the purposes of being able to seek and access childcare through the school-based childcare services that we made available to essential employees and emergency responders. And so I just wanted to note for the record and for the public's information that I think that's an important change that needs to be made if, in fact, it's determined that the executive order calling for childcare from school-based settings we need to make that change or make an adjustment or make that determination if, in fact, that is not happening. I know that's not happening. We need to make that change to make sure that that does happen, because we just can't let these shelters go unstaffed. Thank you.
Next on the list is Senator Johnson, followed by Senator Simonson. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for your time today, members, being up here today. I know this is probably one of the hottest programs on TV in the state of Minnesota, because we're probably only a live event that's been on in the last week. So appreciate this time. And I'd first like to begin by saying thank you to those who have been involved with negotiations, Senators Kent, Newman, Abler, Jensen, and many, many others. This has really been an effort, I know, behind the scenes that many of us don't see and understand, that's going on right now between the governor's office and the House and many things. Many people are involved with that. There's many good things in this bill. As folks have talked about, Section 2, the child care grants, Section 4, the food shelf, Section 15, license extensions, RFA programs, things like that. But there's one thing that I'm very concerned about in this bill, and that's small business. Small business seems to be ignored to some extent in this bill. Yes, there's loans. There's $40 million of loans in here, but when I talk to my banks, when I talk to my small businesses, that's one more payment that our small businesses are not going to be able to make. I got a call last week from a banker close by, Aaron, who's really helped me out a lot in understanding the business situation there. And he walked me through some of our local small towns, and he pointed out to businesses, cafes, bars, restaurants that aren't going to be opening. He said, well, this one in this town, not going to be opening again. This one over here, not going to be opening again. They're working on the margins to begin with, and then when we're shutting them down, they're not going to be coming back. So I'm very disappointed that this bill does not address one of the most critical needs that we face, not only in Northwest Minnesota, but also across the state. So, Mr. President and members, I appreciate the efforts that have gone in here, but I think this bill really fails in one of the most critical things that our state needs right now, and that's our small businesses. Thank you, Mr. President.
Next, we have Senator Simonson, followed by Senator Jasinski. Senator Simonson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. It's a long afternoon. There's a lot of tough issues in this bill. These are unprecedented times. And I think we all can appreciate the work and the effort that has gone on behind the scenes to pull this together. There is going to be a lot more work to do going forward. I think one thing that we can assume is that this pandemic and how it affects Minnesota is going to get worse before it gets better. Starting at midnight tomorrow, we'll be sheltering in place for the next 2 weeks with the hope that we can flatten that curve. Many folks will be staying home. many folks that we need to be thinking about, folks we need to be worried about, how they're going to maintain their small businesses when and if they get the opportunity to reopen. How are we going to keep them afloat going forward? How long is this really going to last? These are questions that we don't know. And, we're responding as best we can given the facts that we do have, which are very few. So a lot of folks are going to have the opportunity to spend at home with their families, trying to protect themselves from getting infected. And that's good. But I think there's a whole group of people that we have forgotten about in this bill that I'm very concerned about. And these are the people that don't have the opportunity to shelter in place, to stay at home with their families, to protect their families. These are the police officers that we see every day in our communities, up and down the street, responding to calls. These are the firefighters that are answering those 911 calls every day, every shift, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 calls a shift. Because when you or a member of your family gets sick and you can't take care of yourself, your reaction is to call 911. We have beat that into you from the day that you were born. That's what you do. Because somebody will always come. And these folks, today is no different from any other day. They're going to continue to come. They're going to come tomorrow, they're going to come next week, and they're going to come 2 months from now. So I'm a little bit concerned that they're not addressed in this bill. Our law enforcement, our firefighters, correctional workers, frontline EMS, nurses, all of these people are being exposed on a daily basis. And current law does not support presumptive assumptions for workers' comp coverage. This was an issue that has been talked about, I know, amongst a working group, and I can appreciate those discussions, but this should have been our highest priority, members. We need to take care of those that are willing to take care of us. We all know that this is going to get worse before it gets better. We all know that these folks are going to be exposed day in and day out. And right now, we have some employers that are pushing back on that. And they're saying, you know what, if you contract this virus, you become exposed and you contract this virus, you're pretty much on your own. Go ahead, use up your sick leave that you've accrued. Use your own health insurance, because we're not going to cover you. We're not going to assume it's a workers' comp issue. We don't know if you got it on duty or if you got it at the grocery store. These are unprecedented times, members. And I don't know, I cannot figure out for the life of me why we ignored these folks. Now, I know how these negotiations work, right? We've all seen it. This is very similar to the end of session negotiations where a lot of decisions are made and a lot of us are not a part of those decisions. But I really need to understand, because as we go forward, this is an issue that we need to address. So I really need to understand why. Mr. President, Senator Gazelka would yield.
Senator Simonson, Senator Gazelka is not in the chamber at this moment in time.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
President.
Simonson.
I'll just talk for a few more minutes. Maybe he'll come. This is a serious issue. These folks don't ask for a lot. They do this job because they love this job. And if there's one thing that all of us in this chamber can understand, is that we have these folks in our communities. We depend on these folks every single day to enforce the law, respond to emergencies, keep our prisons safe, keep our hospitals safe, make sure that people are there when there is need. So I am trying to understand, and Mr. President, if Senator Gazelka would yield for a question.
Senator Gazelka will yield. Senator Simonson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Gazelka, I want to first off say I appreciate your representation of the Senate in these discussions. There are many, many good things in this underlying bill that I appreciate. I also want you to know that I had an amendment at the desk that I elected not to offer after seeing that the House adjourned and went home before we came in today. But I think, as you know, this is an issue that's very, very important to me, and I'm really trying to understand how it is that this issue fell out of negotiations last night. And if that's even the case, if you could maybe just share with us what happened with this particular issue, I'd appreciate it.
Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senator Simonson. One of the issues that was at least important to me was the work of the Work Comp Council. For, I believe, decades, that group has been the cooperation of the trades and the business community not moving forward unless they agree. And that is whether Republicans are in power or Democrats in power, we've tried to honor the fact that that Work Council has helped us thread the needle for those two groups to work together. And so that group does not support this language. And I just feel like in the spirit of what we did with that council, that both of those sides had to agree, and the fact that they did not support this led me to believe that we shouldn't be doing it.
Senator Simonson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Gazelka, for that. And 99% of the time, I would agree with you. I think there is a long history of issues that affect workers' compensation here in Minnesota. Changes are generally broadly supported by the council, and if they're not, they oftentimes don't move forward. And I think that should be recognized and appreciated. But again, I say these are unprecedented times. These are serious issues. Some of our inner cities are facing call volumes like they've never seen before. All of us are going to leave here within the next hour or so, and we're going to go home to our families, and we're likely going to shelter in place, and we're going to do our work over the phone, over the internet, Zoom meetings, all of those types of things, but we're going to do so from the safety of our homes. These folks don't have that option. They don't have the option to say, I don't want to come to work, I don't feel safe. They're going to go to work. So I know that there's pushback from the business side of the council, and I think we should address that, and I think we should take the next couple of weeks as we're away to figure out a way around that, because we have to provide protections for these folks. Mr. President, I don't want to take up any more time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and again, I want to underscore the importance of the underlying bill. I certainly am going to support it. I think it's important, and I'm glad that folks have come together and got that much done, but please let's not forget those that protect us next time we come together. Thank you.
Next on the list is Senator Jasinski, followed by Senator Nelson. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here today to speak to the A50 amendment that was offered by Senator Westrom. I too am very concerned about small business across Minnesota. As a former mayor, I know what it is to have your communities with small businesses. Just recently I was down walking the halls here, and it was an eerie feeling here in the Capitol. They were empty halls. Every one of us in our districts have empty businesses in our district. We need to support more private business support to do this. I'm going to use one example today, and I'm not talking as a golfer, I'm talking as a golf industry. The golf industry on the essential list is considered non-essential. I get that. However, the governor, everybody else recommends that we get outdoors, we get outdoor activity, but golf courses are closed. My concern for these golf courses in Minnesota, there's over 400 golf courses in the state of Minnesota. They have huge economic impact. A lot of members have paid their annual dues. Now they're approaching the prime season of the golf season, and these members are asking for their money back. These golf courses had a difficult year last year in 2019 due to weather, and now to take their prime season and take them away, take their income away in Minnesota is crazy. We have to support our small businesses, and this is just one instance of a small business here, either profit or nonprofit these golf courses are. Either way, they will suffer across the state. We talk about social distancing, great activity. There's a lot of people who won't be able to go into work. They can use this as an outdoor activity. Senator Jensen will tell you our obesity rate here in Minnesota is high. This is one thing that would help people get out, use some activity, get some social activity, things like that. People being closed up in their homes and their apartments, wherever they may be, it's not always very healthy on mental health. So this is one way that we could do that across the state of Minnesota. Myself and Senator Rosen have sent a letter to the governor's office today to ask to have him change the policy. so that we can do this. A typical golf course is 120 acres, and on basically a busy day, they'd have 125 golfers out there at one time. That's one person per acre, folks. That's a prime example of social distancing. Again, I urge your support and try and get this into the governor's office so that they can open these golf courses across the state of Minnesota from a golf industry perspective. Not as a golfer. I haven't golfed more than 2 times in the last year, I believe. I know Senator Bach has some beautiful golf courses in his district, Senator Jensen, Senator Rosen. If these golf courses are forced to stay closed, they will not reopen, several of them. So again, my big concern is across small businesses across Minnesota. We need to give their support. I understand this bill has very many important things in it, and I will vote in favor of it, but we definitely need to address the small businesses across Minnesota that are suffering during these tough times. Thank you, Mr. President.
Next on the list is Senator Nelson, followed by Senator Herr. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're here today, and we've talked about uncharted, unprecedented times. We've never quite had a session like this. We're spread throughout the Capitol. And here we are in the people's house, and the people aren't here. Our people are home. They're sheltered at home or preparing to, and they're concerned about a lot of things. So am I. I'm sure all of our members are as well. People are not only concerned about their health, they're also concerned about their jobs and their families and their personal finances. I'm glad that we were able in earlier weeks to pass particular funding for COVID-19 relief to prepare our health providers, those people on the first line that are protecting our health. And today we have a bill in front of us that does some other things that are incredibly important. I'm very glad to see the provision that is supporting our child care providers and our child care workers. We have heard, every one of us, the challenge that they are facing, and yet the utmost importance that they have in caring for our children, in allowing their parents to go to work and be those first-line defenders. It is essential that this support get out to them. This is a very good provision in this bill. I also appreciate the flexibility that we are providing Minnesotans when it comes to important things like their licenses, whether they be their commercial licenses for their professions, or whether it be knowing that the real ID, which is coming upon us quickly, that we are going to see an extension in that, and we're also going to see an extension in licenses. I also appreciate the fact that we have seen an extension in Minnesotans filing taxes. Minnesotans are very afraid of being hit with large property tax bills, income tax bills, and yet I'm glad we're seeing some extension in those deadlines. But there's one thing that's not in this bill that actually grieves me, and that is there is some good things in this bill for our businesses, our job providers, like removing the 1-week exemption from being eligible for unemployment insurance and for small business owners to be eligible. But it's a smaller part of this bill. And for that, I'm very sad that we do not have more in this third COVID relief package for our small business owners, for all of our businesses. They are the backbone of our economy, and they're struggling. I can't tell you how many business owners have talked to me about they don't want to lay off their employees. That is the worst thing we could do right now. But without customers, particularly those businesses that have been shuttered by the government, without customers, how are they to keep and make their payroll? And of course, as I mentioned, those business property taxes are right around the corner. And you know, the state of Minnesota has something to do with that. We add about 30% on top of every business property tax in this state. It's a misnomer. It's not really a business property tax. It comes right into the general fund here in the state. So while I'm highly supportive of the bill before us today, I want to be very clear that I do not believe that we are doing enough to protect the backbone of our economy in this state, and that is our business owners and our employers. So I encourage a green vote, but I also believe, I know we will be back to do more, and I want to encourage our business owners and all Minnesotans. I do know that we will get through this together, and we're going to have a few challenging weeks in front of us. But it is clear that Minnesotans are resilient, determined, innovative, kind, and generous. We will get through this together. We'll just have to do it 6 feet apart. Thank you.
Next on the list is Senator Herr, followed by Senator Ralph. Senator Herr.
Mr. President, I know the immediate need of this bill need to be out there to help people, but I want to express my discontent. My discontent to this bill is a resource for small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of the East Side St. Paul. And I want to also reiterate the same thing like other senators, that we have to be strong at our East Side business, make sure that we have resources in place, and it's not in this bill. In East Side St. Paul, we also have small businesses that run by many ethnic minorities. You know, resources need to be sent out to them where they can get help, and that's not in this bill also. At the same time, there's no funding. There's no funding to address hate crime in our state. Hate crime toward minority, hate crime toward Asian American in particular. As we say, as we've seen happening in New York, happening in California, happening in Washington State. And I'm glad that Senator Limmer, and if I can speak for Senator Ron Latz, that this is immediate needs, and I'm glad to hear the words from Senator Limmer for his commitment. But at the same time, I know that our agency is working on it, and the governor is working on it too. I want them to put immediate staff, and I know that there's hotline available from Department of Human Rights, but it needs to have stronger resource. And there's no money in this bill for that. So I'm just hopeful that things will go well with this bill, and I hope that everybody are doing well after this session. So thank you very much for allowing me time, and I'm at the same time, my anxiety is high, and I want to come down as well, and hope that everybody take good care of themselves. But I just want to say that it's not enough, and due to my preference, I want to call a session soon enough to respond to a number of things that other senator had just mentioned here, and I have just mentioned here in terms of resource for small business, resource for multicultural small business, and also address hate crime against Asian American in our state. Thank you very much.
Next on the list is Senator Ralph, followed by Senator Newman. Senator Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief, but I do hate to repeat some of what has been said. However, we must need to think about what we're going to do as we go forward. This bill is important. We need to get funding into the hands of the agencies. We need to, at the same time, make sure that we're being responsible about how the money is being spent. I think this bill goes a long way to trying to do that. It attempts to work within the legislative process through a system that has been fragmented by the separation that we are now seeking and having to engage in. I do want to make a couple of comments, however. We have to realize something, folks. There's going to be many businesses that are not going to be here when we come out the other end of the tunnel. Now, I think at this point we have to look forward to see how many of them we can preserve. So I have some suggestions. I would like to make sure that we take a look at the provisions of this bill that deal with small business loans. Unfortunately, as I read the bill, it does not have the expansive coverage that I believe it should. It refers specifically to executive orders 4 and 8, which was primarily surrounding the closure of restaurants, public gatherings, and some of the service providers such as cosmetologists, barbers, etc. This bill needs to go far, far beyond those narrow businesses. There are many small businesses out there. I will give a couple of examples. Dentistry offices. These are mostly small offices, and they are not directly addressed here. I am very concerned about them. Many of them have very low, if no, cash flows because of what has happened. They will not survive this without direct assistance. So I would urge that as we go forward, we work with the governor to try and expand the application for those loans. I also feel that the amount of money that we've put into those small business loans is not enough. We are going to have to put more into it. $40 million, $30 million, whatever the leverage is with the loan guarantee program and with the state direct loan program is not enough. We will burn through that very quickly. So I simply want to urge that we pass this bill, we work with the governor. I believe that the legislature is functioning. We are working as a unit. We have worked together across the party lines. This is what we should do, and we should continue to do that. So with that, I would also like to echo what Senator Simonson said. We have to support, thank, and embrace our first responders. They are on the front lines. I work with my first responders in my community, and they are hardworking, brave people. They are folks just like us, and they are stepping forward and taking the majority of the risks. So I think we have to really be careful to thank them and to support them. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Senator Newman, followed by Senator Tomassoni. Senator Newman.
Mr. President, thank you. I simply wanted to stand for a moment and talk about the bill and where this bill came from. And I just want to remind folks that this bill went through a very abbreviated process, and is in front of us because of the governor's emergency declaration. The bill represents the governor's requests in terms of policy, and it reflects his requests in terms of appropriations. I will indicate to my colleagues that I do intend to vote for the bill, but I will also tell you that I think it has serious flaws, and I'm very uncomfortable with the nature of how we got here. But I acknowledge that we are hamstrung because the governor has declared a state of peacetime emergency, which effectively takes us out of the game with the exception of appropriations. And I'm really uncomfortable with that whole notion. So just to give you some examples, within the bill that includes the governor's request, there are a number of provisions whereby if the money isn't spent on COVID-19 emergency issues, the money then reverts from whence it came. I've already told you that in terms of the $2.4 million that's appropriated for extra staffing on Real ID. If they don't need that money, it reverts to the fund that it came from. In terms of the Minnesota fund, that is a fund that would be utilized to keep the state government operating. If that money isn't used for the COVID, it reverts back to the general fund. There's money in here for veterans. And if that money isn't used for the veterans, it reverts back to the general fund. However, there's $11 million in here, as pointed out by Senator Jensen, that goes to the 11 tribes. And if one of those tribes doesn't use that $1 million, it doesn't revert back to the general fund. It gets divvied up amongst the the remaining tribes. And I think that's a double standard, and I think it's wrong. And I'm not sure why that kind of a provision is in the bill. The other thing I want to point out, as some of my colleagues has indicated, involves small businesses. Without question, small business is the backbone of our economy. And without small business, our economy is going to fail. And we will wind up with at least a recession and maybe a depression. And yet we have spent, in the last couple of weeks, in accordance with the governor's request, over $500 million when we take into consideration that this bill. In this bill, there's only about $40 million or $30 million that's going to go to be designed to help small businesses. And if we are going to bail out the state of Minnesota, how come we are not helping those small businesses whom, without question, are going to fail? And without the small businesses, you're not going to have the revenue to take care of the various organizations and needy people that really we have to support. So I just want to tell you, I'm really, really disappointed in the outcome of this bill insofar as our small businesses across the state of Minnesota. And we are not doing enough for them, and the money in this bill and the money that we have previously appropriated, I really think should have been prorated on a different basis to protect those small businesses. Thank you, Mr. President.
Next on the list is Senator Tomassoni, followed by Senator Benson. Senator Tomassoni.
Mr. President, members, maybe that was an indication we've been here long enough. You know, there's an old saying that everything's been said, it's just that everybody hasn't said it yet. And while some of the things I have to say have been said, I will say this about this situation that we are in right now. And as everybody has said, we are in uncharted waters, and we've never dealt with anything like this ever in our lives before. If you look around the chamber, you'll see that we're practicing social distancing, and there's only 14 people on the floor, and everybody else is spread around in other rooms and keeping their distance from each other to try not to transmit any potential virus to anybody who might potentially have been exposed to it. But if there's anything that we're learning about this particular virus and about what it kind of societal effect it's having, is that we have many deficiencies in our systems that try to take care of people. And I want to thank Senator Newman for some of his comments on small business, because I agree, because when you talk about businesses closing down because they were ordered to, not because they were inefficient at what they did or not because the economy was bad for them, at that point, the government has to step in because the government forced them to shut down. And our small business owners, our bars and our restaurants, our salons, whatever you have, these people have just enough money to make it from paycheck to paycheck, to bill. And while there is money for people to get small business loans, and there's a way for them to potentially keep their heads above water here, the fact of the matter is, if they're not making any money, they're not going to pay the loan, not going to be able to pay the loans back. And so they'll think long and hard about whether they go out of business or whether they get a loan, because those are the choices they're going to have to make. I'll give you an example of what I consider to be a deficiency in our unemployment comp system. Number one is the business owners can't tap into it. And while I understand it in normal times, in today's times, in what just happened with coronavirus, our business owners should be able to, the small business owners should be able to get some kind of unemployment compensation because they were forced to go out of business. After all, they're the ones who pay the unemployment compensation for their workers. I got an email from a single mother, 4 children. She works 2 jobs, one in a nursing home and one as a bartender. Her bartending job was eliminated as a result of the government order to close bars. And she was then forced to apply for unemployment comp. Her unemployment comp was denied because she was making $297 a week in the nursing home, and her unemployment comp, which would have only been $219, was less than that, and so she was denied her unemployment comp. That's wrong, members. There's somewhere in the system that we have to fix that, and when we come back, we may want to take a look at something like that to make sure it doesn't happen. Hopefully what the federal government's doing with the $600 per person of unemployment comp will help this person and will help many people like her. But at the same time, because of some of the quirks within our own system right now, these people aren't qualified for it. The other thing that's really, really concerning to me is the way this bill ended up on the Senate floor. I realize what's going on. I realize that it's hard times. I realize that the legislature was making the right decision to not meet in committees and to not discuss all these things. But the fact that the 21st Century Minerals Fund was not in the Senate version of the bill, and yet it showed up on the Senate floor today in the House version of the bill, and we were not even told about it, there's something wrong with the system, and there's something wrong with the way things are going. And I thank Senator Bach for asking about it before, because we have to actually get the entire legislature involved in negotiations from now on, and not just a few people. I, once again, will say I understand it, but it has to change. And one last thing to people who are out there potentially watching this, we got to stop the hoarding, people. You know, I was down here last Wednesday and I went to 2 Cub Foods, an Aldi, Walgreens, Costco, and there was not one roll of toilet paper, not one box of Kleenex, not one napkin, not one bottle of disinfectant, and not one canister of disinfectant wipes. We don't need to be hoarding, people. I realize how scary it is that you might have to stay in your house for 14 days, but you don't have to stay in your house for 14 days. You can still go to the grocery stores. The grocery stores are open. The supply chains are supplying. Hoarding does nothing but bring in hysteria and makes the situation even worse. Please, please, go to grocery stores when you need to go shopping. Don't go just in case there's something bad happens and you want to have a whole supply of things at your house, because all it's doing is making the situation work. So I hope that we can for sure at least say, okay, today we're passing a bill that's going to go a long way to help a real lot of people that need a real lot of help. But let's start getting back to normal grocery shopping patterns. And finally, for the people who aren't in this bill, because I've gotten several different emails from the disability community, from ABE, Adult Basic Education. The legislative session isn't over. This is an emergency bill. We're passing an emergency bill that will help a lot of people. It's going to miss a lot of people too. But we are scheduled to stay in session until May 18th, and while we're taking a recess until April 14th, we will be back to do the people's work. And if we've missed somebody and someone needs to be taken care of as a result of this coronavirus, I believe it's incumbent upon us to take care of them and figure out a way to make sure that everybody gets their due, and that this particular virus is going to be neutralized. When it is neutralized, I don't know. It might be a year, it might be sooner. Hopefully it's sooner, and we're going to get back to normal life. But for right now, the consequences of whatever's happening, and as a result of government shutdown being ordered by the government, we have to actually be responsible for what the consequences are.
Next on the list is Senator Benson, followed by Senator Rosen. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I want to address the $200 million that the governor is going to have authority to use. I'm really concerned that the legislature is not going to have a little more say in where that goes, so I'd like to ask the governor to pay particular attention to what the legislature has done as it moved COVID money. We asked the hospitals to be scrutinized. They have to demonstrate a financial need in order to get money for the COVID response. We have asked child care providers to be financially at risk in order to receive one of the grants. So I would ask the governor use that level of scrutiny as people are going to come and realize how much money is available. We have limited resources, and I hope that you will maintain the level of scrutiny that we have in this bill and in the hospital bill. I'd also ask you, Governor, to consider that as we come out of this COVID response, as the epidemic breaks, as we return to normal, the key to our economic viability is going to be the strength of our small businesses. Those small businesses who've had to lay off employees, who have put their very livelihood aside for something that's out of their control, will want to come back and rebuild their dream, and they will want to hire people. But they have to be here in order to do that. And so I hope you will seriously consider that as you look at the $200 million and the number of requests that will be coming to your office. And with that, members, I do intend to support this bill. We need to be unified and continue to work together, and I look forward to doing so until we have gotten through this.
Next on the list, we have Senator Rosen, followed by Senator Uyghur. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, as you know, our responsibility here at the Capitol, and I always say this even in the district that I serve, our responsibility is to our aging, our children, and our vulnerable. And unfortunately, the definition of vulnerable has grown exponentially here lately. And we have stepped up to the plate in the last few weeks. We have appropriated a lot of money. And as the Senate Finance Chair, I just want to say that I am proud of this COVID fund that we crafted with the 4 leaders in response to the governor's request for $200 million, that there is the flexibility for the governor, the pliancy for the governor to be able to react as soon as he can, but still allow the legislature to be involved and to have that responsibility on how much is being appropriated and where is the money going. So I feel that that has been crafted fairly well, and I do appreciate everybody's input on that. And I hope that same respect for everybody's role in this process continues when there is money going out the doors to various groups, that there is accountability in place for those liabilities that we are facing, and that we can actually say, did we spend the money well, and was it used appropriately, and was it effective? So this is just phase 1, really, of this whole situation that we're in right now, and I certainly do want to address our backbone that's been used several times, the small businesses. There's no doubt the small businesses are the backbone of our state, and we need to address them and support them. And our first responders, I think that was very eloquently said. And let's just make sure that we continue to have the accountability of where that money's going, and that we say that we are part of this, we're around the table, and we're taking the responsibility along with the governor in this crisis that we're in, and that we have the right to say, we are there with you, Governor, let's do this together. So let's take care of our Minnesotans, our vulnerable, and thank you. Appreciate it.
Next on the list is Senator Uyghur, followed by Senator Senjum. Senator Uyghur.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a first step, but what about education? We talked about business. Yes, they are the backbone, but students are our future. Starting Monday, we will roll out distance learning for 2 weeks. Thousands of teachers and cooks and bus drivers, secretaries, paraprofessionals, administrators have been working on, distance plans, delivering Chromebooks in some cases, serving meals, providing daycare for first responders and health care. We've had thousands of persons on hourly pay contacting us saying, what about us? This is all hands on deck for education. And they deserve to be recognized as well. And for business to be addressed the next time we meet, I implore us to reach a bipartisan resolution on addressing the hourly workers as well as other unique issues that have been raised. There's a number of documents that are in place where there is quite a bit of movement and agreement, but we just have to get to the finish line. Students are our future, and let's weigh in much more the next time we meet. Thank you.
Next on the list is Senator Senjum, followed by Senator Pratt. Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, these are special times when people like ourselves are called together to lead. I can remember, and I'm looking at Senator Bach and a few others that were here in 2003. We came into this chamber looking at a $4.5 billion deficit. We had no idea where that was going to take us or what we were going to do with it. But we were called to lead, and we made it through. 2007, we came back and looking at a $6.2 billion deficit. Again, mortals like ourselves didn't know where we were going with this or how we were going to get there, but we were called to lead, and we made it through. And then I recall 2011, of all things, a government shutdown. We can decide on whose fault all that was. It was difficult, but we were called to lead, and we made through. And today we look at something I don't think any of us could have ever imagined. A crisis that I think history will look back at us and at this crisis as something that our country, our state, our communities have never seen before. And here we are, 67 of us. We didn't necessarily, if you will, ask for this kind of a job or this kind of a crisis, but here we are. We are those that are called to lead. And so as we look at our mission today, and as we look at Senate File 45, or House File 4531, it's a file, members, and that we need to certainly go forward with today. There's no question about it. And there's gaps. There's gaps, whether it's the small business group, whether it's a public safety, there's gaps. There's going to be more work to do. We know that. As this thing unfolds, we're going to be back here, and we're going to be doing more and more and more. But that's our responsibility. We were called to lead. So members, as we approach this vote today, I would hope that our Senate could make this unanimous. I think our people, the people across Minnesota, need to know that we're cohesive with the governor on it. We may not agree with everything the governor has provided us in terms of ideas, but today I think we need to be cohesive. Today is the day that politics in Minnesota need to come together, and we need to do the right thing. So members, I humbly urge and sincerely ask for a positive vote on House File 4531. Thank you.
Next on the list is Senator Pratt, followed by Senator Kent. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll be brief. We've heard about these special times. These are unprecedented times, and they call for unprecedented action. Through yesterday, 182,610 Minnesotans filed for unemployment. Last year, over this same week, fewer than 3,200 Minnesotans applied. That's the type of economic impact we're seeing. And as we've heard, that doesn't include our neighbors that stepped out and opened up their own businesses. They put their fortunes, they put their time, their sweat, their passion into making our communities better, and they're not able to collect on a lot of that. That's why I'm proud to have had a small part, well, maybe not so small, to have a part in developing 2 loan programs that will infuse $80 million of working capital for these small businesses to stay afloat. I want to thank Commissioner Grove for his work, along with Representative Vogel, to put these together in such a way that we are addressing the small businesses that are most impacted, our Main Street businesses, our local businesses, our neighbors. These unprecedented times call for leaders to put partisan politics aside and to work together to ensure we come out of this health and economic crisis and to do what's best for all Minnesotans. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Senator Bach and then Senator Kent. Senator Bach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to thank the governor. He's taking some very decisive actions. And, you know, he's got a lot of information, a lot of data that the rest of us and other Minnesotans don't have. And I know he's coming to what he thinks is the best decision for our state on a daily basis as he manages us through this crisis. And I can only imagine how lonely it must be sometimes. So having said that, I'd like to thank his wife, Gwen, for the support that she's giving him as he tries to navigate our state through this very difficult time. I want to add a word to caution to all of us to be careful with some of the armchair quarterbacking that we're doing. There'll be plenty of time to critique the governor's actions when we all look back at this someday in hindsight. You know, this today reminds me of probably one of the fundamental reasons that we have government. It's so that we can pool our resources and do things for our community and for ourselves that we can't do on our own. So having said that, I want to thank all Minnesotans, because it's very easy for us to sit here and push a green button and spend $330 million today. And unlike the federal government, who can just borrow the money, not a very tough vote when you just borrow the money, and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and probably the great-great-grandchildren someday will pay it back with interest. But the votes here today, this bill is paid for. This bill is paid for by Minnesotans when they make a purchase and pay sales tax, on their income tax, on their earnings, on their dividends, our businesses, on all the business taxes that we have. So to everybody who is participating, we all can feel good because we get to push a green vote, but we get to push a green vote because of all the people out there are pooling our money so that we can get through times like this. And finally, let me say, we don't have our arms around this problem yet. So those of you that are watching, please take the recommendations of the Department of Health seriously. And I know we're all going to slip up. Some of us probably slipped up on the floor here today and we're maybe closer to 6 feet to somebody. But let's all do our best to distance ourselves from others so that we can get through this and see the number of cases subside, so that someday we can come back here with a full chamber of 67 people, and we won't someday be back here appropriating more money to deal with this crisis that just exponentially keeps growing. So that's my number one thing I think today, just to all Minnesotans, please, please pay attention to the Department of Health's recommendations so that we get our arms around this problem.
Senator Kent, followed by Senator Gazelka. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's appropriate that many of us are expressing gratitude today for people all around us. I want to take a moment because these past few weeks, obviously for all of us, have been pretty remarkable. And for us to come here in this moment, in this place, and do this important work on behalf of the people of Minnesota, I want to recognize the people of the Minnesota Senate, particularly our staff, the people who make it possible for us to be here safely, for us to have generated this work over the past few weeks under extraordinary and challenging circumstances. I think we all know people who work in companies where teleworking and Zooming and all that stuff is normal. That is not a normal way for the Senate to operate. We operate in person in groups with open doors. And for us to be able to do this work has required amazing dedication and talent on the part of our staff to get us here. So I want to take a minute and just acknowledge those contributions. And we know there's a lot more to come. I also want to take a minute and thank our colleagues. We've come together both literally in a sort of a disparate way than we usually do, but figuratively to come together to find solutions, to work together to benefit the people of Minnesota. We all know that these extraordinary times are calling for us to make sure that we are responding to our best angels, and we are seeing that, and it is something to be commended. As our state navigates the uncertainty that comes with this pandemic, we are showing Minnesotans that when times are hard, we can work together to find solutions. And today we are showing that the legislature can set our differences aside and in times of need to work for the people. And I also want to reflect for a minute that the nature of the work that we're doing, and we've heard people refer to it in different ways, we have to strike a balance, particularly in a moment like this. We have to act with urgency to support the decisiveness that our governor is showing, which is so important. But at the same time, we have to be deliberative and make sure that what we're doing is done accurately, carefully, thoughtfully, with accountability and with an eye to the future, and with an eye ultimately to making sure that we're taking care of the people of Minnesota. And so that is a needle we have to continue to thread. And I think we've done well so far. We still have work to do, but our work is definitely not done. I want to take a moment to think about our friends and neighbors throughout our state, but also around the country who are facing really tough times. And we all feel that in our hearts. We all get news that is challenging, and we all have to figure out how to take that inside and use that to move forward and try to keep working and making a difference. Families across Minnesota are anxious about recent closures. They're uncertain about the future, as we all are, and worried about our loved ones. And while many of us here are spending time socially distancing from each other and from our loved ones in many cases, you feel that in many ways we are more connected, more united than ever in our efforts to keep each other safe and to take care of each other. I think about things we've seen in the news recently. Something that really touched me was teachers who parade in their cars through the neighborhood of a student who's having a birthday because that child has just missed their birthday with their classmates, and that brings a little joy to that kid. You also think about the businesses who stepped up when our healthcare workers asked for masks, and they brought them by the thousands. And we need that while we are buying time to make sure that we're providing the protective equipment for the healthcare workers of Minnesota. A lot of analogies have been made that this is like going to war. Our president has made that analogy, others have. Our frontline soldiers in this are our nurses and our doctors and the people in our clinics and our healthcare system and our first responders. And we owe it to them to give them our very, very best and to do our best by staying home, by providing these resources that we're doing here today in this bill so that they have a chance to do their good work. And I've seen somebody suggest that when this is over, they need a parade too, just like other warriors have gotten in past efforts. We've talked a lot about small businesses, and as a former small business owner, I get it. I know the responsibility that comes in running a small business under normal circumstances, and I can only imagine the stresses and the challenges among small business owners and their families and their employees. At the federal level and at the state level, we absolutely must continue to do good work as we are doing today, but there's so much more to do to mitigate the added burdens placed on small business owners and their employees. And these are our neighbors. These are the businesses that make up the very fabric of each of our communities in our state. But we need to make sure that when we have that conversation, that we remember that we have to keep Minnesotans safe and we have to protect our healthcare system. That is how we're ultimately going to rebound stronger, moving as strongly as we possibly can moving forward. We know that until we have healthy communities where people feel safe working and people feel safe going about their everyday lives, that our economy simply cannot fully recover. And it requires the smart, balanced approach that I really appreciate we have heard so much from Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan in terms of how we address all of these issues. When we look at this bill and what we're going to pass today, which is so important, this is important work. Minnesotans have felt the impact of COVID-19 and they have made their voices heard, and I am so grateful to so many who have reached out to all of our offices via email, via phone, via social media, to make sure they know their stories and how their communities are hurting so that we can be responsive. Please keep it up. And the work that we're doing is a strong step in the right direction. This bill is, just to recap a few major points because we've spent a lot of time today talking about them, it does allocate the crucial resources to Governor Walz and his team to increase our hospital and ICU capacity as he outlined yesterday. It supports our child care providers, both family and center-based, who are struggling in these tough times to take care of our youngest Minnesotans. And we're giving tremendous assistance to our food banks and our food shelves where we know the needs are already so great and are going to continue to be a challenge. And then it does something as basic as solve the challenge of people who are going to have expired driver's licenses in this moment, and they need to know that they don't have to worry about standing in a line in a license center to deal with that. But our work is not done. We have to remain united as we continue to prepare for the unknown. And this is why it is critical that we continue to do our work together, as we have been, to provide the answers, the solutions, the guidance, and the clarity at this time. I also want to take a moment to thank Governor Walz for his incredible leadership during a time of so much uncertainty. It has been comforting to hear from Minnesotans how much it has meant to them that he has been decisive, that he has been strong, that he has been clear in the way he explains the challenges and the solutions. As a former teacher and command sergeant major, he has been calm and measured in leading our state at a time when we need it most. His decision to close schools and restaurants and bars and other gathering spaces has been hard, but it's been the right decision. Asking us to stay at home unless absolutely necessary over the next couple of weeks is also a really hard choice for many people, but it is the right decision. And he has exemplified what true leadership looks like by rolling up his sleeves and stepping up when we really need him. And now, we too, in this chamber and around, must do our part to continue partnering with him and his cabinet in this important work that we're doing. And finally, we as Minnesotans, as we move forward, let us think about who we are. We are the people who never take the last slice of hot dish. We are the people who shovel each other's driveways. And it's in that spirit that we have our strength and our compassion for our neighbors and our ability to roll up our sleeves and tackle the challenges before us. So I just want to say I am grateful to working with Senator Gazelka throughout all of this. I think we have been able to work well together and lay down a pathway that will be able to continue doing so in the future. And with all of our colleagues to make sure that our Minnesota families are taken care of. We will get through this period of uncertainty. We will do it together. Thank you.
We'll go to Senator Abler and then Senator Gazelka. Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Kent. Sorry about the order, the way it worked out. It is unusual times, but I thought you gave quite a compelling summary, and I'm not going to repeat anything you said. I have something different to say, Mr. President, and I think it's suitable to get it this time at the end here where we start looking forward. I think one thing that's been kind of interesting is this is nobody's fault. And there's no party to blame. We're just trying to all sort out what to do. And I'd like to quote one of my favorite writers these days, a fellow named Michael Osterholm, who I appreciate his view and his knowledge and the respect we have. And he says in an article with Jill Burkham, I'm very impressed with Governor Tim Walz and how he has worked with the commissioner and the state health department. And so am I. I want to just echo that. I totally agree with that. And I also, he comments that I don't think I can imagine a more compassionate, sympathetic health commissioner than John Malcolm. She actually has been incredible. And this is from the article. But there's one thing else he says that I think is really worthy in this article. He says, and I'm tired of hearing people say, we'll do everything even if we overreact. And that's what I wanted to talk about. We were all given a copy of this article, The Hammer and the Dance. And I thought that was really interesting. It talked about people staying in place. And there was one salient sentence there talking about what to do. And the author, Mr. Pueyo, said, pick the ones that give the biggest reduction for the lowest cost. And that's what I would like to mention here. And so I respect the governor and his decisions. I'm not second-guessing the decision, but I am going to try to offer him some guidance about going forward. And I would be less interested in doing that or feel less comfortable doing that if I hadn't been communicating with him and Senator Malcolm for the last 2 weeks, at least from one side to the other, and they've replied a little bit. I know how busy they are. There was a list published about essential businesses. And if you're essential, you get to stay open. If you're not, you don't. And so if you're a printer, you don't get to stay open. If you make cement products, you don't get to stay open. You sell household, you make cabinets, you're closed. Car dealers, we talked about that. And even employment services, curiously, are closed. And so what this list here is a list of people who are going to lose their house and maybe lose their business. And Governor Cuomo, who I have enjoyed listening to, kind of related that if you don't want to just do all the things they say, then you're for people dying, and it's really, it's not the money. Never mind the money. People have to live. I totally agree with that. But what I want to suggest to the governor and the commissioner and the people who are advising him and the people in Minnesota, that just because they're not essential doesn't mean the fact that they're going to stay open would be unsafe. So I'm going to suggest a Minnesota way to get this to go forward. I suggest we don't have a list of essential versus non-essential, but we make up a list of safe versus unsafe. And so that would actually make quite a difference. Now, there's two categories of people that we deal with. There's some very dependent on state programs, like the people with disabilities, and I'm very concerned what's going to happen with some of the day training places and group homes and all that. And Senator Hoffman gave me permission to pretend he's standing by me. We talked about this, and he didn't comment, but he wanted me to speak with him. Because whenever somebody seems to say something a little contrary than whatever comes out in the executive order, it's a partisan reply. This is not a partisan reply. I've not heard any partisan replies today at all. I've heard people give amazing speeches, and we maybe touched on some of the same things, but we said things that we felt and know because we've been watching and we care so much. So I think the Minnesota plan could be, if you're safe to operate, you get to operate. Certainly essential. I've been in Anoka a lot, and I ran into the son of a cabinet maker today. He has to close. There's 3 people working in a warehouse making cabinets. They must close. Tell me, what on earth good is that going to do? What kind of triage is that to keep people from social distancing? They're already 100 feet apart. And so as we move into the second, third, fourth, whatever phase we're in, let's be reasonable about this. I happen to rent to a hairstylist. She has 1 chair, and 1 person comes at a time. Next door to me is a financial services business, and they're kind of busy. They have many people in their office, much more than the 1 person and the 1 person getting their hair done. So I'm not suggesting we turn open the faucet to block parties and basketball games, but there is a way to help to not cause the harm that we will have no way to pay for. And then I will not have to get letters in the mail from my district fearing they'll lay off hundreds of people in the community ed program. And what are we going to do? So, Governor, you've done a good job. You've taken action, you've been firm and thoughtful. And I know the challenge you've been through here. I don't know, I just imagine I know. And Commissioner Malcolm, I'm glad you're the one there. But this is my advice to you, and as we all band together to go forward into an area that's safe. And furthermore, the industries and the companies that are not safe to go forward, how can they become safe again? How can they practice good techniques so that they themselves can open up? Because there's just not enough money we have to fix all this stuff. So I want to thank the members of this body and the people watching, and my leader is going to finish up here. I think we've done a really good job. I think people can be proud of us for trying. And I think as we look forward, I think the ideas brought forward here, I think people actually would agree with that, and we can get out of this challenge we're in. Thank you, Mr. President.
Final discussion on House File 4531, Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members. What times we are in. I think about even how we're doing this today. This is something that's never been done before as we try to protect all of the people of the Senate, having not even half of the staff here and none of our support staff, and trying to work through how do we all vote while protecting each other. And as we're moving forward, I just think about what is it that we're trying to do, and together we're all trying to defeat the COVID-19 virus, and we're all trying to make sure that we don't kill all the jobs and livelihood of all the people in Minnesota at the same time, and that's a delicate balance. So as I came here and what I've been working on the last few weeks, and just thinking back, I'm amazed that at the February forecast, that was late February, this was just a blip. This was like, this is maybe something, but really it wasn't even factored into where we're at today, late February. And so now we watch as the President has done his best to try to take control of this, and our governor and all other governors have trying to do their best to get a handle on this. And here we are as part of either the solution or the problem. And so what I told myself, here's the three things as I approach this, what I'm trying to do, and working with the governor and working with the minority and working with the House. Number one, what's best for Minnesota? How do we work through the decisions we make? What's best for Minnesota? Number two, how do I help the President and our governor, Governor Walz, how do I help them succeed in defeating this? And number three, how can I give my best advice in a way that helps even if I disagree? And there are times that with the governor that I have disagreed. And I do appreciate that behind the scenes that I can push, and I do believe the governor listens. He doesn't always agree with my advice, but at least there's that place that we can talk about issues. And I know that we have to defeat COVID-19, and the other part that I raise is, Governor, how do we not destroy the livelihood of so many people? I haven't seen the report, but somebody told me there's data that shows for every percentage point of delinquent loans where people couldn't make their loan, you can calculate how many people are going to commit suicide. And so there's so many issues that we're dealing with besides just COVID-19. And so as we're working through those, just be mindful that I believe we are working together. I don't think I've ever seen such working together of the four leaders, House and Senate, daily talking on the phone, trying to figure out how do we work on this. And that Minnesotans can be proud of, especially when I look at what happens at the federal level. We are working together. And it is my goal as leader of the Senate to make sure that Governor Walz does succeed in doing in defeating this. So today is phase two. We already passed over $200 million. This is over $350 million more. So over $550 million that we are putting into the governor's hands to make decisions for Minnesota. And that's why we demand some accountability to make sure that those resources are spent wisely. And you heard from a number of people, both from the Democrat side and the Republican side, that we have not done a good enough job helping our small businesses. And we have not. Of that total number, almost $600 million, there's $30 or $40 million that we've made available to small businesses. And so in the next phase moving forward, that is an area that I expect some help. Again, all of us working together. What can we do to make sure that these small businesses make it through this tough time? And I'm going to be reaching across the aisle, and I'm going to be working with the governor, but that cannot be an area that we pass on in any way going forward. And you heard Senator Simonson. I was out of the room for part of his conversation about how do we help the first responders. That should be another area in the next phase as well. So this is just the first and second phase of all of us on the fly trying to make the best decisions we can. And so this is a bill that I hope everybody votes for, but as we move forward, there will be more to come. Thank you.
So members, before we vote on the bill, I'll just give a little reminder how we're going to do this. So when we open up the roll, the members in the chamber will vote and then exit through the front door. The majority leader and the minority leader will stay in the chamber, and the other members will go out, keeping your social distancing, and hang out throughout the Capitol. And then I will call each remote room or each alternate location individually. Those members will come into the chamber, they will vote at their desk, and then they will exit the chamber, go back to their location, and then I will call the next location. And then after we go through all the alternative locations, then we will get the votes from the people that are voting remotely. So members, we are on final passage of House File 4531. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, please vote. Please come vote at your desk. Members in the retiring room.
Did you vote your grandpa? Tell him it's not election day. Grandpa's
I'm going to have Matt Little vote for me, but
it's not election day, Grandpa.
Members in the East Gallery, please make your way down to your desk and vote. Members in the President's office, please come to your desk and vote. Members in Capitol Room 206, please come to your desk and vote. Members in Capitol Room 303, Capitol 303, please come to your desk and vote.
What? All right, so you could go home. Andrew. Here.
Was this you?
People in the media said, I think they're probably on the scoreboard now, about to stand here. People there, whose head is that?
Members in Capitol Room 237, Capitol 237, please come to your desk and vote.
I'm hoping. It's alive. It's alive. I hope it's not on the TV. got my eye on the hashtag. Yeah, you're ready to find out, right?
Members in Capitol Room 323, Capitol 323, please come to your desk and vote. Members will now call on the majority and the minority leaders for them to relay the votes from members in remote locations. Senator Kent, please report the first remote member's name and vote.
Mr. President, I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Jim Carlson.
Senator Kent reports an aye vote for Senator Carlson. The Secretary will report the vote. Okay. Senator Kent, please report the next member.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Greg Clausen.
Senator Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent, the next member, please.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Carolyn Lane.
Senator Lane votes aye. Senator Kent, the next member, please.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Sandy Pappas.
Senator Pappas votes aye. Senator Kent, the next member, please.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Ann Rest.
Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Kent, the next member, please.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Jerry Newton.
Senator Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Chris Eaton.
Senator Eaton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Jason Isaacson.
Senator Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Patricia Torres Ray.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Kent.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Ron Latz.
Senator Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I would like to report an aye vote for Senator Melissa Wickland.
Senator Wickland votes aye. Senator Gazelka, please report the votes for the members in remote locations.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to record an aye vote for Senator Paul Anderson.
Senator Paul Anderson votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
I'd like to record an aye vote for Senator Gary Dames.
Senator Dames votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
I'd like to record an aye vote for Senator Dan Hall.
Senator Hall votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
I'd like to record an aye vote for Senator Karen Housley.
Senator Housley votes aye. Senator Gazelka.
I'd like to record an aye vote for Senator Kerry Rude.
Senator Rude votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we'll take up the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the adoption by the House of the following House concurrent resolution herewith transmitted. House concurrent resolution number 4, a House concurrent resolution relating to the adjournment of the House of Representatives and the Senate within the public interest until the public interest warrants it. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the House concurrent resolution number 4 be adopted.
Discussion on House concurrent resolution number 4. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, members, we are adjourning to the date of April 14th, 2020, like before, and like before, the Majority Leader of the Senate and the Speaker of the House together can call us back earlier.
Any further discussion on House concurrent resolution number 4? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. We will pause to get the vote count from members in alternate locations.
This one could fail. People are feeling squirrely now.
Was that Hayden? He's the one that always says no.
Receiving a sufficient amount of ayes, the motion prevails. Next order of business is the 13th order of business, announcements of Senate interest. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, I have some sad news. Today I was informed that former Senator Steve Dill passed away today. I served with Steve from 1993 to 2011 when he was both in the House and the Senate. He represented the good people in Carver, McLeod, Meeker, Stearns, and Wright County. And he had a rather remarkable life. You wouldn't think that when you first met him. He is rather quiet, but very approachable. Most people don't know this, but when you get to know him, you quietly you began to realize that this guy had a little bit more depth to him than most normal people you would ever meet. My mother would talk of people like that, and she'd use the phrase, "Still waters run deep." And that definitely was a caption that characterized Steve Deal. Most people don't realize this, but Steve, you wouldn't know it by recognizing him. He was a rodeo star. He would ride bulls, and he also was a farmer. And some of us would get a little annoyed at him because when there was a good dry day on a Saturday when the legislature was working through the last remaining weeks of a session, he'd sneak away and plow a field. And we'd get a little frustrated because we needed his vote on the floor, but we began to realize that planting his field was vitally important, not only to him and his family, but to the rest of us that are dependent on farmers doing their job. He served in Vietnam. He was a member of the Army, but most people don't realize that he was a member of the Green Berets. And in the very early part of the history of Vietnam, in the early 1960s, he was working on the Hearts and Minds campaign, getting to be introduced to the villagers and the rice paddy farmers in Southeast Asia. He had a particular love for the Hmong people, and I think he could speak either Vietnamese or Hmong fairly well. Anyone who knows him, he also was a veterinarian. And it was very common, I'd walk into his office sometimes and there'd be one of us talking to him about some problem we have with our local pet. And he was always good to tell us good advice. I think the one thing that if you ever met him, you knew that not only was he approachable, but he had and he was witty, but he also had the driest sense of humor anyone would ever meet. And his floor speeches were very entertaining. And everyone who got to know him and listened to a couple of his speeches began to realize that you were waiting for the humor to bubble out of his presentation. He'd also tell a joke, and if he'd ever tell a joke, the one thing you'd always realize is that he would be so entertained by telling the joke, he'd start laughing at it before the punchline was told. And then he had just such an infectious laugh that if you ever heard it, you'd never forget it. And everyone in the room would start laughing at the laugh rather than the joke. And then the end of the joke would finally come, and then it was even better after you said it. I remember him also stapling a little piece of fleece from a lamb. He'd have a bundle of it in his office all the time, and he'd staple it to some press release or a letter to somebody. I can't remember if it was chiding someone for fleecing one of our taxpayers or if it was awarding someone. I can't remember that, but I do remember little tufts of fleece would be scattered on the ground as he'd staple it onto different pieces of letter or a news release. I served with him. I have fond memories of Steve Dill, and I think anyone who has ever met him would remember him as a very good friend, and I hope you would remember his family, Pamela, and the 4 kids, and offer that grace that they need at this time. I'd like to yield, Mr. President, to Senator Newman, who followed him into office.
Senator Newman.
Mr. President, colleagues, I had the opportunity to follow Senator Dill into the Senate. He was my senator for many, many years. He represented Wright, Meeker, and McLeod County back in those days, and those are three counties that I still have. I got to know Steve primarily through political life and got to know him very well over the years. And people used to laugh back home that Senator Dill lasted in the Senate as long as he did because he was either related to or friends of everybody in his district. And I think that that is absolutely true. I personally, I've got, I think, like 22 parades that I have to engage in every summer. I think Senator Dill went to 1 or 2 or 3 parades. He'd ride his horse through the parades and then go off and visit with folks. He was a very, very popular man in his district and truly well loved by all. Senator Limmer brought up his sense of humor, and Senator Limmer is correct. If you have never been in his presence when he told a joke, you really missed something, because he had a very unusual infectious laugh, and he simply couldn't help himself. When he'd tell a story, he would begin laughing, and I don't know if he ever did get to the punchline. But he had this homespun humor, whether he was talking about shearing sheep or the love life of his ewes and rams. He absolutely could make a joke out of just about anything, and it's one of the things about him that was so wonderful. So I will tell you that Steve Dill was a man who loved his country, he loved his family, he loved his God. He was honored to have served in this body for as many years as he did. And so on behalf of this body and me personally, I want to wish his wife Pam and their children the very best, and I would like to wish our condolences for them. Now, I'm about to ask for a moment of silence, Mr. President, but before I do, I see Senator Senjum standing at the front of the room, and perhaps there are some others that want to speak, and so I would yield to any senators at this point that wish to speak.
Senator Newman, we will come back to you before we're finished for a moment of silence. Senator
Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for giving us time to do this. My deepest condolences to Steve's wife and his family. He sat right down there during my time here in the Senate. And I always remembered in the spring, he'd be gone for several days, excused from session, because it was the time of the year they had to leave and shear sheep. But the fond thing that I remember, and I am so happy I found this in my desk. I saved it. And Mr. Leader, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to read a prayer that Steve Dill wrote. Because I was here 4 different, I can see Colleen smiling, I was here 4 different times and got to watch Steve Dill be our chaplain of the day. And this is on his letterhead, so if anybody wants a copy, I hope the family has one, but somehow it was important enough to me that I saved it in my desk. But this prayer was, he put this is the footnote. This prayer was written by Senator Steve Dill on July 5, 2003. He recited this prayer to the open daily session of the Minnesota Senate 4 times. May 7, 2004, May 24, 2005, and 2009, and May 15, 2010. And this is how it goes. He titled it, "This Prayer, especially for the Minnesota State Senate, but also for all others." It says, "Dear God," now put this in the context that Senator Limmer mentioned to you that he was a veterinarian. So this will be very fitting when you know that. He says, "Dear God, give us the wisdom that is symbolized by an owl, the common sense of a horse, sometimes known as horse sense. Give us the speed of a leopard, the working habits of a beaver. And God, give us the longevity of a giant tortoise, the playfulness of a squirrel, the loyalty and devotion of a domestic dog. And God, please give us the courage of a lion, the gentleness of a lamb, and God, give us the patience of an old draft horse, but the determination of a mule. And God, as we deal with each other, give us the listening ability of a deer and the lifetime commitment of a bonded male and female Canadian goose. And God, give us the strong desire and capacity to love and care for each other. And God, show us the way to good health, to happiness, to success, to prosperity, and to spiritual fulfillment. This we pray especially for the Minnesota State Senate, but also for all others. Amen."
Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to speak, but I have to. To know Steve Dill was to love him. It's simply that simple. And as Minority Leader with Steve Dill, I can tell you there's hardly a senator that would frustrate me more at times, because we would come into this chamber wanting to be lockstep, and it was always, I think we had 21 members, so it was 20 in one, and then Senator Poggemiller would call it bipartisan, at least on their side, but Steve, as I said, to know him was to love him. Tom Bach, Senator Bach pointed out, he sat in Senator Marty's chair over there in that corner. Just a couple of things that come to mind. I believe there was a point in time where he had a circus bill that went over to the House and came back concealed carry. And I'm not sure he even wanted that bill to pass, but he had to stand in that corner and sell it to the Senate, and it did pass. And just full of humor. All of the other times in caucus, as we would get into a little bit more perhaps heated arguments or debates about certain issues, I would call on Steve, tell us a story. And I always had a story. And I'm not going to tell them because I can't. But just one come to mind. Maybe some have ever heard this. It's like he's at the Twin City Airport and he realizes he has his jackknife in his pocket. And now what does Steve Dill do? He goes into a restroom, stands on the seat of the stool, reaches up and puts his jackknife up into the ceiling tile, comes back a couple days later and there's his jackknife. Now, that's not very exciting when I say it, but when Steve Dill told that story, you would roll on the floor. Likewise, we were on a bonding trip in southeast Minnesota, and in those days we didn't take buses. We had one van and a whole bunch of cars. On a certain occasion, Steve Dill was the last car in the so-called parade, and he ran out of gas, and nobody knew that. And so what does Steve Dill do? Well, he has to get out, and he has to start hitchhiking, and some farmer comes along and won't let him ride in the pickup. He has to ride in the box of the pickup. He gets to town. The service station won't give him a gas can, so he has to walk to town, find a gas can from somebody in some neighbor in that town, so to speak. And he goes through that litany of how he gets back to his car and how he catches up to us. Now, I didn't make that sound very funny, but when Steve Dill told it, you would, again, roll on the floor in hilarity. So, a wonderful man, a memory that I'll always treasure. And Steve Dill, rest in peace. You were a great senator. You served us well.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was very sad to hear about the passing of Senator Steve Dill. He was absolutely, as everyone has said, one of the kindest senators that we've ever had the pleasure of serving with here in this chamber. He was also kind of a gentle mentor to younger members. I remember once meeting in an interim committee hearing, and I didn't wear my tie, and he said, well, I think it's most appropriate that senators, wear their ties. And when they're in doing official business in a very gentle and kind manner. I still don't do it during the interim, but I know Steve Dill probably mildly disapproves, and I actually think of him whenever I walk into a hearing during the interim without a tie on. A couple of funny stories. I don't know, I'm not sure, I wasn't listening to all of Senator Limmer's comments. He might have mentioned this already because it was one of his hallmarks. He always kept jars of grains on his desk in his office, and he would give people tests. He would ask them, he'd have barley and wheat and oats and other kinds of grains and seeds, and he would ask them to name them, and of course, if they named them correctly, he would go ahead and have the rest of the meeting with them. Another story about his sheep. One morning he came into committee and he leaned over to me and said, Senator Dibble, do you smell me at all? Just do me a favor. Do I smell like anything? I said, you smell fine. He had been in the barn that morning helping birth some of the lambs. So I thought that was funny that he was doing his work on the farm and he hopped in his car and it was a morning committee hearing and he got there on time. I would also say that I really appreciated the time he took with me to understand my community and the concerns that we were confronted with, and tried very hard to learn, and made a real effort to cross over the aisle and support me where he could. And I appreciated he was always asking for data and information, and I was happy to oblige him with that and provide that. And I'll just wrap up by saying a good friend of mine's father passed away a number of years ago, and he was a well-known member of the community, but clearly some members of his family didn't share the same party affiliation, but there was Senator Dill who showed up to pay his respects and to observe the memorial of my friend's father, and that was very touching to my friend and their family, and very impressive to me as well. He was a good man. He will be missed. He was one of the good ones, and one of the senators of this institution that will be remembered fondly and well for a long, long time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any additional comments before we go back to Senator Newman? Senator Newman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members. Thank you for those stories. They, of course, all occurred before I got here, and some of those stories is the first time I've heard them. So on behalf of his family and myself, we really do appreciate it. With that, Mr. President, I would request a moment of silence.
Members, please stand for a moment of silence. You may be seated. Any further announcements of Senate interest? Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, or until a date and time determined pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution Number 4.
Senator Gazelka moves that the Senate do now adjourn until Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, or until a date and time determined pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution Number 4. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. The Senate is adjourned.